Welcome to the Almost Sideways podcast. I'm Zach Saltz. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Almost Sideways podcast. And today we have a special treat. We have director, writer, producer, actress Ana Asensio with us. And she's here to talk about her latest film, La Niña de la Cabra, or Goat Girl. I want to read a little bit about Ana's background before we get into the interview. Ana Asensio is a Spanish actress, screenwriter, director, and producer based in New York City for more than 2 decades. Born in Madrid, she trained as an actress in Spain before continuing her studies in New York, where she built a multifaceted career spanning film, television, theater, and independent filmmaking. Working between Europe and the United States, Asensio has developed a distinctive artistic voice characterized by emotionally resonant storytelling, complex female protagonists, and a deep interest in themes of identity, belonging, and social exclusion. In 2025, Asensio premiered her second feature film, La Niña de la Cabra, Goat Girl, at the Malaga Film Festival. Set on the outskirts of Madrid in 1988, the coming-of-age drama explores childhood, prejudice, spirituality, and social belonging through the friendship between two girls from very different worlds. The film was warmly received by critics and audiences alike and quickly began collecting awards on the international festival circuit. It also received a nomination for Best European Children's Film, further establishing Asensio as one of the most distinctive emerging voices in contemporary Spanish cinema. So on behalf of the Almost Sideways podcast, I'd like to welcome Ana Asensio to our podcast. Welcome, Ana. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's such a treat for me as well.
Great. I'm a big fan of your film. I just watched it earlier this week, and I thought it was absolutely terrific. So I have a few questions for you today. If you could start out a little bit by telling me a little bit about your background as a filmmaker, and maybe what first attracted you to telling stories visually.
Yeah, so my first love was acting, and I pursue acting since I was a young adult, and for many many years that's all what I wanted to do. But it kind of like the way I tap into beginning to tell the stories in a different way, not as an actor but as a writer director, was kind of like out of necessity. For a very long time I was trying to break into the system in United States, and I kept being offered the same roles over and over because obviously my ethnicity and my accent, and so I said, I'm going to write a story that fits me perfect. It's going to be about this Spanish woman who is an immigrant and comes to New York City and runs into all these troubles. But really, my impulse at first, it was just to create for myself an opportunity as an actress. However, during the process of writing and putting together the film, which took me years, I realized that, oh my God, this is absolutely amazing to tell a story in this way. And so I enjoy so much the process. I was lucky that the film was successful, and that encouraged me to continue on this path. It took me a while to figure out what would be my second story because, as I said, I was not pursuing to be a director. It kind of like came secondary, but then I realized that that's what I want to keep doing. The acting became secondary. I keep acting here and there, but that's not my pursuit where my energy goes to. Right now, I'm just diving into trying to write the stories and make bring them to the screen.
That's great. Thank you. How did you come up with the story for La Niña de la Cabra, Goat Girl? And how much of the story, if any, is autobiographical?
So, my first film is called Most Beautiful Island, and it's very dark story. It's very gritty, and so when thinking about what to write next, in a way, I felt the pressure of following that path of doing another gritty story. But at the same time, there was something within me that wanted to bring some, a luminous, bright story to the world, maybe because of the dark times that we're living in. So I started to think about my childhood in Spain in the late 80s. And I thought, if I want to tell a story about a child, it has to be from my own experience. And I have to set it in that time also that is more appealing to me because, of course, not technology involved in the communications. So I pull from my own experiences, my memories. It's not autobiographical, but there's a lot of elements that come from my childhood. The setting is very similar. I grew up in a blue collar neighborhood in the outskirts of Madrid. Um, and I saw, I mean, the essence of what happens in this film, it really happened to me in the sense that I was searching for answers at an early age. Perhaps questions that I don't know if other children had, because at that age you don't share those things with your friends. But it was deeply um, important for me and disturbing in many ways, like the big concepts of life, death, God, hell, heaven. All these things were heavy concepts that I was trying to figure out, and tormented me in so many ways, you know. So I kind of like wanted to explore the mysteries of childhood and that moment in life when you start trying to figure out those big answers.
Yeah, I mean, I love that theme in films, looking at children who have to encounter very serious issues at an early age. And I think your film did an excellent job of showing what it's like for a young girl, in this case, to go through the death of a grandparent, not just the grief, but also the kind of existential questions that it brings up. What was the writing process like for you? I mean, was this something that you were able to write in a period of weeks or months, or was this something that you kind of started and stopped? What was that process like for you?
So the very first thing I did was I wrote a page as if it was a little story, like almost like a tale, and the name came right away. So I was like, "This is called La Niña de la Cabra," and it's this little, almost like a children tale. And I knocked on the door of a producer in Spain, and I said, "I have this idea for a movie," and he said, "Well, where's the script?" And I was like, I don't have the script, but I just want to know if you would produce this." I do things in a very different way, right? Like because the previous film I produced it myself, I'm always thinking about, is this going to be doable? Is this going to happen or not? So anyway, he said, "Well, write the script. I'm intrigued. This is interesting." So I dive into the story, not knowing the story. Basically, I had images in my head, almost as if they were postcards, and I wanted to have this little girls in the middle of nowhere searching for answers, but I also wanted to show the intimacy of my room when I was little, and everything was scary at night when everything got dark. And I was kind of like, okay, I have all these visuals, now I have to pull together a cohesive story that hits moments that build momentum in the story. And that took me a while, I have to say. Like, it didn't come out so quick. The overall idea of what things would be happening, yes, but the actual script took me a while. I would say, like, maybe I worked for 9 to 12 months, so I would say like a year. Then I had a script that I was happy with, but then the producer suggested that I will take it to a lab, screenwriting lab, and then things start getting messy, because I have to say that sometimes labs are confusing because you hear all these voices. So I ended up going back to my original way after workshopping it for a little bit. And so basically, is that script that it came as a first draft, but polished with when I start working with the producers.
That's great. And I have to say, I'm a big fan of your first film as well, Most Beautiful Island. And I guess I don't know if you feel this way, but I don't know if I can think of two films that are more different. They're
Yeah.
tonally, in subject matter. I guess maybe working with animals is maybe the one overlap I see. But I'm wondering if your first experience making a film maybe influenced some of the ways that you chose to make this film, or chose to not make it.
I loved how I approached the first film and the storytelling, like dividing the film into halves, and I wanted to do the same thing this time. So if anything, I think that you can see that the same person is behind these two stories, because there's this similar pattern. Almost it feels as if each movie has two movies within
Mm.
the movie, right? Like two halves. And so I wanted to preserve that because I really love this idea of like changing halfway through the film into what that's another tone, that's a different way to use the camera. So um that I wanted to preserve because I really enjoy that. And somehow, there's a little bit of flirting with fear, and I can't say horror, but in a way it felt a little bit like maybe a horror film for children because it could scare some children, certain scenes, right? So that I also wanted to explore and keep from my experience for Most Beautiful Island, that was full of tension. Um, but uh, but yeah, everything else I wanted to go the other way. As I said, I want this to be uh, like a beautiful postcard. Like I thought, I want every frame, every scene to have this colors and this tone of like it's not going to be a dream, it's not going to be a tale, but it kind of like wanted to be playing with this borderline sense that, is this real, is this a memory, what is this, kind of like. So yeah. Hmm.
That's great. I hadn't made that connection about the tonal shift midway through, but now that you mention that, yeah, I mean that's really clear and fun to experience. But it does also touch on primal fears in a lot of ways too, and there is a sort of, I guess, anxiety in both films as well. That
Yes.
it's a little bit hard to pinpoint exactly where it's coming from. It's very like intrinsic, but you feel it as you're watching it, and it's just both are really awesome to experience.
Thank
Can
you.
you tell me a little bit about where you found these wonderful younger actors, in particular, your lead? She has like such a natural energy and charm to her, but she's not like a stereotypically like cute little movie kid. Like she's really awesome in the movie.
Oh my God, she's great. So when I wrote this script, of course I have this imagination of how would she be, and then I was like, is this even going to exist? Because with child actors, what I think is important is to find a child that is as close as the character as you can get, not to get a kid and then trying to make them act as if they are the other character, right? So we search all through Madrid and the outside of Madrid as well, in the old-fashioned way. We didn't want children with experience, so it was like outside of the schools, outside of the after-school programs, um, on the streets. We place them in street lamps, like just old-fashioned papers, and trees. And so many children applied, and I saw like about 600 submissions for this role. So the character was always going to be 8 years old, but of course we thought, oh, I'm gonna have to use an older girl who could understand what is being said to her. So we look into 10 years olds to play it 8, but there was something already missing there. They already outgrowth this kind of like vulnerability and curiosity and innocence. So Alessandra walked into the room. She was only 7 years old, and it was absolutely clear to me that she was a character. The way she looked and processed questions, it was just so interesting to look at her eyes. Um, kind of like figuring it out, what you were trying to tell her. In a way, I was like, it's exactly what the story is about, what the film is about. So that was her. And then Juncal, the girl who plays Sarasade, she in her case, there was only 7 girls who came from that community. The Romani community were not so open to participate in this film, so it was a miracle that she came in, and she was just a character beyond anything I could have imagined. She was so fresh and spontaneous, and yeah, it was great. Very, very different type of actresses, I would say, and girls.
Um, so you chose to set this film in 1988 Madrid. You said a little bit that this is based on some aspects of your life growing up. What aspects from this time period and specific place were most important for you to convey in the story?
So for me, it was very important that, even though the story was fictional, I wanted to set it in a very concrete and realistic time and place. So I decided this is going to happen in May of 1988 in Madrid. So what actually happened in May 1988 in Spain? There was a political situation that was very tense in the country. The ETA, the terrorist independentist group from the north, was very active. There were bombing that would happen in random places with civilians. And I recall that as a little girl thinking, oh my God, there's going to be a bomb in this, in this, um, how do you call it? Mall. And so I wanted to play that because I remember that before, of course, we have two channels. So the television will be on for the adults, and then you'll hear that. It wasn't like children channels or anything like that, like nowadays. So all this information would come, and you would understand some things, but not others. But I remember that was all the time on TV. There was a kidnapping of a businessman for so many months, and the whole country was so worried about this man, and kept coming on the news. And so there was also an awakening in the society because we came from a long time of a dictatorship with Franco, and now we have this left-wing government. And there was a sensation and feeling on the streets that people wanted to feel free. So the music, the movies, was when Pedro Almodovar started making his films. There were other movements in filmmaking that was very, very interesting. At that time, there was a movement of genre that was called the kinky films, and it was all set in Madrid, and they show how greedy and and complicated Madrid was in some ways, because there was the heroin crisis. So I also wanted to place that into this moment in the film, right? I remember going out to play in the park and looking for needles to make sure I wouldn't get punched with a needle and or hit with a needle. And there was the AIDS concern. So all that I wanted to integrate it into the film. So I used real moments from television segments that were aired on May, and radio news, original radio news archive that I placed into the film as well. Yeah, I thought that there was like a subplot that it was supporting the main plot of independence, right? Like in different ways.
Yeah, and I was really fascinated by this kidnapping that plays such a crucial role in your film. And I'm wondering, did you have like personal recollections of that kidnapping, and like how did you see that fit within the world of the story that you were trying to create, which in some ways was quite maybe apolitical? I mean, it was about something more personal and emotional. Like why did you choose to include this kidnapping as such a huge plot point?
I thought that that would be great to play in the imagination of the little girls. As a kid, you're constantly looking for adventure, and if nothing exciting happens, you just invent it, right? I remember in my neighborhood thinking, or we will talk about, oh, that's the bad guy, and it was just a poor old man walking around with dark, clothes. But as a kid, you're like, oh yeah, that guy eats children, or it's just funny. So I thought that that could play a good, interesting role in the imagination of the girls, confusing another person with the kidnapped man, and how could that affect their lives? They could become famous because they found it. And so um, and how naive, and what was the side of a child perspective on something that was so serious, right?
Mhm.
So kind of like to show the other side of what a news can be, right? Depending on who is the receiving the news, right? Like an adult versus a child.
Yeah, and sort of the perception of what that might look like from a child's point of view. You mentioned the
Yes.
Romani community earlier. Did you do any sort of research into that community? And was there a presence? You said that you didn't see as many actors for the role of Sherazade, but why was it important for you to explore and depict the Romani community in this story?
Well, I remember as a kid that this group will come, different families will come to the neighborhood, and they will play music, and they had a goat, and then the goat disappeared eventually, and it was only the music. But this idea that there were people living just maybe a few neighborhoods far from me, but we never interact, right? Only with this exchange of like performance and donation. Um, and um, and then they disappear fully, entirely. Then I don't know where the gypsy community. Well, sorry, we say gypsy in Spain as an easy term. I know there's sensibility around that. The term is, or the proper term is Romani, right? But at that time, also how it's heard in the film, right? They say gypsies, gypsies, um, and so there's this curiosity that I always had about them and their lives, and they entirely has a different culture than the Spanish culture, and is and they don't mingle. So it's very, very rare that Romani will marry a non-Romani person. So I wanted to look for that and find details, because of course I had my observation from the outside, but it has nothing to do with the reality. So I did my research. It was really hard to tap into this community, I have to say, knock on many doors, and eventually I gotten three people who spoke with me openly and told me details, and but they were very skeptical. They said, please, I only ask you one thing, please do not portray us as thieves or bad people in your film. I said, of course, absolutely not. They are hurt from filmmakers who have portray them as just one way, and not exploring the complexity of their lives. So I said, after talking to them and all that, I said, you know what, since this story is only going to be told from the point of view of an 8-year-old girl, that 8-year-old will see few things, and the rest she will just romanticize in a way. She's not going to be living with them. We're not going to find those inside of their um, housing details. It's just whatever the Romani little girl shares with the non-Romani girl, that's exactly what we will see, and the rest is just for imagination, right? So I was careful to make clear that this was Elena's story and not Cerezade's story.
Yeah, and I thought that came through really clear in the story, and it's also about a child being friends with someone who maybe doesn't look like them, maybe for the first time in their life. She has that nice line about this chicken doesn't taste like the way my mom cooked chicken. So understanding the difference between people is, I mean, a really seminal moment in any child's life, and I thought that was captured really, really nicely in your film.
Thank you.
Your film has a really specific look to it that I thought was super impressive. It manages to look, I think, kind of nostalgic, maybe without being necessarily romantic. And then, like you said earlier, you have this big kind of tonal shift that's kind of reflected in the scenery and the aspect ratio. I'm wondering what sort of like planning did you do for that with your crew to achieve that look?
Yeah, so I wanted the film to look as if we shot it in the 80s. So that was my approach from the beginning. I was like, I want this film that when you play it for a moment, you'll be like, oh, this is an old movie that I never saw from the 80s. So of course, I tried to shot this on 35, and producer said, no way. Um, and then I said, okay, we have to do everything that is possible to make the texture and the looks as if this was shot in a Kodak from 85 or 88. And that was the aim all throughout, right? And then I also thought, well, the camera plays such an important role for me. I mean, I'm very, very visual, and I think about every movement with the camera when I'm writing the script, So I was like, okay, so the camera has to be in this part of the story, eye level, so close to Elena, as tight as her as she feels. She feels like she can't move. So I want the cameras to be so close. And then when her world expands, when she makes the steps to break through, I want the camera to move forward. I mean, move forward, step back, and open up and see more, because she's suddenly seeing more, expanding her brain and her horizon. So that's when it came the idea of, okay, we should then change the aspect ratio to help to contribute to the storytelling. Um, so yeah, and then for the dream sequences, I wanted to have another spec ratio and be have a whole different texture and look, because again, that came from her own imagination, and she maybe pulled from little visuals that she see on a horror movie that was playing on TV, and that play in the subconscious. So wanted to tap into that as well.
Um, yeah, I mean, the film just has a really striking look, and the interiors too, like that apartment that they're living in with like the walls and the ironing board and the TV. I mean, can you talk a little bit about how you achieved those kind of period specific details? Was that difficult to do?
Well, so we were extremely lucky because we have a limited budget. We look into so many places, apartments that they wanted to have a distribution and windows and whatever I wanted. And then the production designer was going to transform that into the look that I wanted, right? But it was so costly and it was
Mhm.
just impossible to pull that together. And then we look into apartments that were for sale on the internet in Madrid. And this one, we saw pictures of this and we're like, oh my God, this is crazy. The apartment is like that. So we called them and they said, well, this apartment has been closed down since the 70s because of dispute on a will. And now we just whatever, open up or resolve the will, and we're finally going to sell it. All the brothers that they own it, and it was untouched. Like the light switches were from the 70s, the wallpaper was from the 70s, and the thing is, like, sure, it was like a decade before the setting, but I have to say, in my apartment was from the 70s. I mean, people weren't keeping update if you have you're in specific social economic, I mean, my parents didn't have the money to be upgrading the apartment every 5 years or anything like that, so that was very common. And it was fantastic. Everything was kept. I mean, electricity was not update. There was no water in the apartment, so the wallpaper was original. The furniture was original. We kept, like, I would say 85% of those of the things that were there, and then we got props that were sold on eBay, the original from the period. Every single thing was like, even the pencils, everything that people sell these days and you can find. So that was very important to me that we kept everything original by the period.
It sounds like you were very fortunate to find that location. Um, so you shoot your film, great cast, awesome locations. You're in the editing room. I heard you say in another interview that you're fond of the saying that a film is made in three ways, right? It's the written, the shooting, and then the editing. What would tell us a little bit about the editing process, what that was like, and maybe if aspects of the story or tone were shifted during that process.
Yeah, so the editing process was a little tricky because I remember when the editor received the footage, he said, "Listen, I know that you like to be completely hands on everything, but let me do a cut on my own,
Mm,
and then we talk." And then he said, "Well, I'm just gonna warn you, you don't have much material, so there's not much room to play with."
mm,
And I was like, "Okay." And he presented me what he put together, and oh my God, I sunk. I felt so nervous. I was like, is this it? That's it? We don't have any more? And he's like, I don't think so." And I was like, oh Jesus, I mean, I have not accomplished what I thought. So then I have to figure out, okay, what it was in my head. Perhaps I didn't shoot it enough, or I don't know. So there was massaging into the edit to get to that, you know, very specific subjectivity and imagination of the character. And then is when I started to put layers within the subtlety, because there was not much room to play with.
mm.
But I was able to figure out ways within whatever little I had. And it was at the very, very end that I was still not satisfied. And I said, I don't know. I mean, I think that I need to play with a voiceover, even though I thought that I will never do that. And then I tried with, I did my own recording and I played over. And then I felt something. I thought, I think this make it more personal, perhaps make it what I wanted in some ways, what I didn't achieve in one capacity. Perhaps this is gonna help to bring it to that idea that I always wanted to achieve. And instead, sometimes when you're an adult, you don't know if what you remember from your childhood, it was told to you, you saw it in a photograph, or it actually happened. So um, that's kind of like how the voiceover came at the very, very last minute. And as I said, the editing process was a bit more tricky than I was expecting.
Um, yeah, I mean, the voiceover kind of plays a pivotal role in the story. I think it does a few things. Like it really does a nice job of, first of all, setting the story pretty clearly in the past, but as you said at the end, kind of calling into question the veracity of what we've seen, whether this is a true, like, authentic recollection, or whether this is maybe fantastic in some ways, which obviously elements of that are depicted on the screen. Does this mean you want to edit your own films, or was having a separate person to kind of sift through the images helpful in kind of narrowing that down?
No, there was an editor, and he first did, as I said, that his own cut, and then we worked every single day together, every moment we reviewed
Okay.
together every single thing. He he's a terrific editor and has worked for so many years in Spain in all different type of genre films, and different genres of filmmaking. And so he was wonderful because he grounded me on ideas that I was like, I know it's not possible to do this, right? And he's like, everything is possible. You can do whatever you want. So it was amazing. It was very, 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 very open, very liberating, rather than telling me, no, that's the way I've been doing this for 40 years. I can tell you, Anna, that that works and that doesn't. No, he was like, no, let's go for it. You want to try this? I was like, yeah. Do you think it's okay? He's like, of course, anything is. So that was amazing. He really encouraged me. Yeah, he was wonderful. He was super, super helpful.
Yeah, I think there's sort of sometimes this built-in assumption that, especially with like Sean Baker, who edits his films, and this movie, it reminded me a little bit of the Florida Project, but it's like an editor can sometimes have such a unique perspective that really makes the piece richer than what you had even written down on the page. So I'm glad to hear that even if the experience at first was maybe a bit surprising, in ways that you weren't expecting, ultimately you arrived at a satisfying point.
Yeah, no, it was a learning process too. Obviously, everything is a learning process, and this is only my second film, so
Mhm.
everything was just like a luxury for me to keep learning from other people who have more experience than myself.
That's great. Well, I only have a couple more questions. One question, you kind of alluded to Almodovar earlier. Were there any kind of cinematic references or flashpoints that you took and applied to this film, or were there any films that you were kind of trying to be in dialogue with when developing the story?
Yeah, so I was inspired by different films, but one that was quite clear was Cría Cuervos by
Mhm.
Carlos Saura. It's called it's Grow Crows, right? How do you call it in English, the title? Um, Cría Cuervos. I don't know how it was is the title in
Ra-
English.
Raised Crows.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
So that film had this element of darkness within children that I wanted to tap in. And it's also, it's set in a similar period. I also was inspired of in a very different way, but like Beast of the Southern Wild. It's one of my
Oh,
favorite films, and so that kind of like freedom and fantasy. I didn't achieve that, but it was always in my mind. And then there's a film, Australian film called Celia. It's a horror film, like set in the 50s, but it was shot in '89. That was I mean, it was also an inspiration to me, the way they treated uh, childhood and the dark side of childhood, and also there was a political element playing throughout the film. So that was also a big source of inspiration for the film. And count with me or count on me, right? Like no, what's the title in English? Sorry, I'm just being.
that's okay.
I keep switching from these days from Spanish to English all the time. Um, I
No
forgot
worries.
right now. It's not coming to me in English, the title.
The one that I thought of was Spirit of the Beehive.
The Spirit of the Beehive as well. Yes.
And kind of like an interest also in like the sort of sinister and macabre a little bit, like because in that movie it was Frankenstein, but in this
Yes.
movie it's maybe a goat. Um,
Yes. Hmm.
that's wonderful. Last question. Do you have advice for filmmakers who are up and coming or maybe working with an idea but maybe haven't fully fleshed it out yet? What would your advice be to someone who wants to make a movie, maybe an autobiographical movie, and shoot it on a relatively low budget?
I think that you know, put all together, or just kind of like vomit your story on a piece of paper, or on a screenplay, and then narrow down to the essence. I mean, that's what really, 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 really is important. And then try to make it in the most simple way but meaningful way. I mean, make it very, very personal, but forget about the flashes. That's not necessary. It's just, as long as it's personal, it would be very unique because it's your own story. So I think finding the details that are just, just and you might think, oh, nobody will understand this, and actually you realize that many, many people will understand that, because in different ways it's connected to the same essence. And again, it's just going for the essence, and fighting through your vision, and yeah, listen to others, but really trust your gut, because if it's, especially if it's coming from you, if you're pulling from your own memories, only you know what you're trying to say.
All right. Well, Ana Asensio, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. And Ana's second film is La Niña de la Cabra, Goat Girl. Where can audiences look to find this film in the future?
So I don't know exactly. We don't know exactly which digital platform will be playing. It's right now playing in New York City at Cinema Village, but we'll see. Hopefully, it opens up in other cities as well, in theaters. It's obviously the dream of any filmmaker, right, to play your movie in a theater. But there will be a platform. There's also an American Airlines. If you take a international flight, it's playing there. But the final platform, we don't know yet.
All right. Well, we'll definitely look for it. I encourage people to check it out. It was a wonderful film.
Thank
Your
you.
first film is also incredible as well. Thank you for joining me here today, and best of luck as you continue to promote and get audiences to see your films. So thank you for joining me today, Ana.
Thank you so much, Zach. It was a pleasure.